Hi, it's Paul Cavalconte, and I'm here today with a world-class concert pianist who is as comfortable in the hallowed halls as she is in her beloved adopted home of the East Village in New York. Harriet Stubbs has turned rock reinvention, classical covers, into a kind of a cottage industry, and the object of her affection now is David Bowie's sonorous songs from the early 1970s. One of the very best is Life on Mars, in an arrangement by Mike Garson, the pianist who worked with Bowie in concert and on classic early 70s albums like Aladdin Sane. Here is Harriet Stubbs to perform Life on Mars, bringing it down to earth for WQXR. Harriet Stubbs, I'm so sorry that our Steinway piano doesn't have a lightning stripe painted down its face in honor of David Bowie and in honor of your amazing reframing of David Bowie's melodic, somewhat wistful music, especially in the song Life on Mars and the Mike Garson arrangement. How did you connect with Mike?
In 2019, I went over to LA and played in Mike's studio. And we sort of started to form the idea of this album and what it was going to be. And then the pandemic happened, and it actually evolved into being something much more eclectic than it was ever going to be as a result of having to wait. And so it kind of came at exactly the right time. We started with a love of Bowie. That was step one. And then Mike is also a very serious pianist. So, you know, we just came together and had so much in common and just came up with all these ideas of what we might do, and it was amazing.
So in this environment, it made sense now. It needs Pathétique.
Exactly. Pathétique sat there, and the Bach Gould homage as well, which, you know, we both love Glenn Gould, and was the D minor leading into the next piece as well, even though it's a completely different genre. Just somehow made it all sit right in the middle together. And the Chopin Godowsky was crazy piece of music, which every time I play it, I just sort of, you know, throw it into the universe because it's such a monumental piece of music, even though it's very, very short. So Chopin wrote his etudes, then Godowsky wrote some crazy etudes on top, and then Mike Garson came along, and he actually wrote it because there was a piano competition where someone got through to the finals with Chopin Godowsky etude that they played very slowly, which he felt was cheating. So he wrote the piece saying, well, no one will ever be able to play this. And when we managed to do it in one take and we actually recorded it, I was very excited.
David Bowie is one of the most missed artists, not only for the world, but as a New Yorker, as a guy who lived only blocks away from WQXR studio. His longtime collaborator and producer, Tony Visconti, is down here as well and is a great WQXR fan. And it pains me that Bowie is not able to turn on the radio and hear your recording on WQXR, along with the music that you've just been talking about, because he loved classical music and he really had that sensibility.
Forever curious about other genres. That famous quote about how you've always just got to be that little bit uncomfortable and you know that you're doing something interesting. And I love that about him.
You picked all this up at that magic age where gifted people discover that they have the gift. It's always like at about 5 or something, isn't it?
I don't remember it. I don't remember learning. I don't remember what it was to not play, actually.
That's beautiful. So it's so deeply a part of you.
Yeah.
How about a little thumbnail sketch of your career from that point on, some of your highlights?
Well, I started learning when I was 2.5 and then performing at 4. And then at the age of 7, I completed all the grades. And at 5, I went to Guildhall on full scholarship for the next 10 years and had some amazing teachers. Did my first solo concerto performance when I was 8 and really started like touring recitals when I was sort of 11, 12.
You have referred to Rachmaninoff as your work husband, or one of them. I think that we can throw Liszt in there, although he's a handful.
He gets a minute too, definitely.
Let me ask you, which one of those work husbands would have connected most intimately to what we just heard, your performance in that rhapsodic style of Life on Mars?
You know, I feel that it has a little Chopin in there with the tenor voicing, which Mike does really beautifully throughout his arrangements. He has a real sensibility for the tenor that feels very Chopin to me.
And tell me about what it's like to start your days in London in the company of avant icon Nick Cave going for dips at the crack of dawn.
It's become such a wonderful and rich part of my life, and probably my favorite part of every day when I'm in London. We are neighbours. We happened to meet when I was walking back alone from a swim one day, and he came over and had a chat with me. And then every day since then, when we've both been in London, on the walk to and from the river that we swim in, talking about music, literature, painting, what we're reading. It just becomes such a magical part of every day. And then we have the swim in the middle, and we come back refreshed and feeling even better. And the second part of the conversation has always kind of taken an elevation from the fact that we've had the swim in between.
It's wonderful that you've inspired him in that way. He's inspired you. You perform his song "Push the Sky Away" on Living with Mars.
Yes.
As well as Coldplay's Yellow and Paul McCartney's Blackbird.
Yeah.
Do those find you, or do you find them?
When I was going through how the album was going to tie together, when we decided that we were going to LA, that I was going to go to LA and record it in January, it was a conversation with Nick that started it. And it was on New Year's Day, and he was starting writing his new album. And that's when things really started to get moving with doing it. And we recorded it at the end of January with Mike in LA. And the way that Push the Sky Away came to be in the middle of the album and next to the Bach, with them both being D minor, was totally accidental, but actually ends up being the same as my first album, Heaven and Hell, The Doors of Perception, which has the Bach Busoni D minor right in the middle. And I didn't ever think about programming it in that way, but I realized afterwards that it has this sort of meaty D minor middle, just like the first record. So and then the Blackbird was based on Bach Beret, so Blackbird came after the Bach, and then it felt, natural to go swimming with Coldplay.
And they really did find each other as a result. The previous album, give me the full title of it again.
Heaven and Hell, The Doors of Perception.
Heaven and Hell, The Doors of Perception, produced by another legend of music, Russ Titelman, featuring a dramatic recital of a Blake poem by Marianne Faithfull, yes, and your thematic connection of Blake to music. You have become sort of a multidiscipline curator of classical music, pop music, other aspects of classical art, but it always stays on the classical platform. What I love about the way you're pulling pop music into classical is you really are transforming it. We have the records already, and we have classical music that's going to stay exactly as it is forever, because that's what makes it classical. But you are going into a third stream, as we used to call these fusions back in the day, more so with jazz. But you're doing it with this pop music and with people in the modern world who really are of that intellectual metal, like what you described with Nick Cave, or the kind of guy that David Bowie was, as really a polymath of the arts.
Yeah. I feel very lucky to have fallen into these relationships with these stunning individuals who have stories for till the end of time that are just, there's never enough time to hear all of them, and they're so amazing, and I learn so much from all of these people,
The album is Living on Mars, and we are so happy that Harriet Stubbs is not only living on Earth, but permanently settled in New York City, a vital part of our evolving music ecosystem, and a very welcome guest today at WQXR.
Thank you very much for having me.